Welcome, welcome. Okay. If you are joining us via the Teams meeting, I see we have one person coming in already. Welcome, Craig. We're going to go ahead and dive right in to this topic because we only have 30 minutes. I expect a few other people to trickle in as we go on, and a few other people will probably chime in from social media side of things. But for the moment, 30 the plus side of 30 minutes, Todd, is we get through stuff pretty quick and everybody's happy. Downside is we only have 30 minutes. So let's go ahead and dive right in. For those of you who are watching, if at any point you have questions or you want to go ahead and just raise your hand and want us to go back over something, there is a Q&A button actually in the Teams meeting, and you can also put it in the chat on social media. We will definitely leave time at the end of this to circle around and make sure all questions are answered. So feel free to use that Q&A button in the Teams meeting here on Teams and here on social media. Go ahead and throw your questions in the chat. So today's topic was a long title, but I thought I was feeling pretty clever about it on that one, which is, are you cyber naked? 8 free ways to protect your assets from cyber criminals. Um, Dangerous. I have a 2-year-old, so I was getting a little dangerous to the edge there, but I felt fine about that. Um, Stuff's changed, and I think that's not going to be news. I think Todd, you can confirm from right. Let me go ahead and do some introductions here. But Todd, you and I connected because things changed a crud ton in 2020, and we got together because a lot of people didn't believe us at the time. Uh, Before you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then from there, do people believe you now?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, Logan. My name is Todd Thorson. I'm from Tange Technologies and Cybersecurity. I'm just outside of the beautiful city of Chicago, and things have
Hey.
massively changed. And it's a struggle I have every day to get people to understand that these threats are very real, very prevalent, and people some still just don't feel the risk is real. They just don't think because it hasn't happened to them yet where it's been devastating. Everybody has a story already. And I don't think they truly believe it. And sadly, they always seem to have time to talk about it after.
I mean, I would say it's a little easier for me to believe there's a problem. The fact that we're communicating there's a problem is very much gotten easier to communicate. I think you have to be living under a rock not to have heard of so and so's brother that got hit by one of these things that lost, $50,000, got ransomware, had all their stuff dumped on the internet, right? Like it's happening so often that it's really hard to find somebody, in my opinion, that's not doesn't have some 1 degree to them that this has happened to. And so we're going to talk about a lot of stuff today. I don't want, I've got a lot of sources. So for the purpose of this recording, I'm going to throw them up there right here. Understand all the stats and data we're going to bring in reference today come from these sources. And you can go ahead and hit us up if you want a copy of everything. You can also just Google them. They're publicly available, and these are reputable cybersecurity and financial institutions. So this next stat, and I will reference where this one comes from. This comes from the World Economic Forum, which is the prevalent global economic authority. They came out last year, towards the end, beginning of this year at the WEF conference, and released a startling statistic, Todd. Criminals hijacked approximately $9.5 trillion from the global economy in 2023. And for context, in 2023, the number of all the money in the world that moved around was approximately $1.5 trillion. I got a handy dandy little calculator somewhere around here. My phone's missing. So I did the math. And the math is in. According to the World Economic Forum, cyber criminals hijacked 9% of every dollar last year from the global economy. That's nuts.
The thing is that's a 9% tax off the top before the government gets their tax.
That boggles my mind. I pay less to the state of Ohio in sales tax than I am to cyber criminals. Like that's like think about it, right? Like say I don't know that's you think about this and I said the stat in passing on previous presentations and I've gotten the response of you can't be serious, right? And I get that response because that's a stupid number. But it's a true number. And the stats are going to come in. We're going to go through that. And so the question on the hand, I think a lot of people, even if they weren't aware that 9% of every dollar is being hijacked by cyber criminals, they see the trends, right? They see that this problem's getting worse. The world's definitely not getting more stable and more friendly. And every year they keep, I would say it feels like the heat from the higher, it gets a little hotter for most organizations and business leaders. No matter what vertical you're in, nonprofit, insurance, biotech, finance. I mean, you name it, right? Like everybody kind of feels this heat a little bit more. And the things that we keep telling ourselves are ringing less and less true. I get it. I did that for years too. I'm so small. No one's ever going to come after me. There are bigger fish in the sea. And yet we're going to keep, that's not what we're seeing here in terms of the stats. Our industry, Todd, and I think you can see this in your side, it's expected to hit about $300 billion in 2027 as like a whole market, which means, and it's growing at about 11% per year, the cybersecurity industry. Why are people spending $300 billion as a global economy on cybersecurity?
It's not enough, right? I mean, think about that. 300 billion versus the 10 trillion that's being stolen.
It's a need, and that's what I said too. You're absolutely correct. Like at 10 trillion, like your choices are as a global community. Our choices are, hey, either we spend money on cybersecurity or the criminals just take the money at 10.5 trillion. What's our choice here, right? Like it's very binary when you break down the numbers, even though the math is super convoluted.
And it's outpacing the growth of the world economy. That's the
Yes,
thing, right?
I've got some stats actually in a couple slides on that, and it's some of those things that are boggling. So first off, I think let's back up though. We're talking about big numbers, talking about the whole world. That's very vague. Who is doing all this, right? Who are the people that are actually coming and getting this money? And that's a really good question. Personally, I group them up from these stats into four categories. You can argue maybe there's not enough in here, maybe a couple of these should be blended together, but for the purpose of today's talk, I'm blending them into four distinct columns. And understand one person can be in multiple columns depending on what they do. That's just how the cybercrime cottage industry works. You've got nation state backed attackers. These are the guys that are backed by governments like Iran, North Korea, Russia, where they're actively working with the military or governmental powers to generate cash flow. You've got cyber criminals. These are, I would call the run of the mill, and that's why I say you can have one person doing two different things. These are guys just trying to make a buck. They're trying to make easy money and score. You've got hacktivists still. I would say that one's becoming less and less of an issue. It still exists. Hacktivism is absolutely still a thing. But what I'm seeing, it's just being outpaced by the financial sector. Hacktivists are the one category here that really aren't motivated by money. They're motivated by some kind of political, moral, or religious agenda, typically. Um, they're around. They're still doing stuff. We're probably not going to hear a lot about them on this presentation for today. That's fair to say. And last but not least, we're seeing a rise of insider threats. These are employees that are getting opportunities from criminals. We have seen story after story this year of employee working for telecom. Someone randomly reaches out to them on Messenger and says, "Hey, want to make $10,000? Go ahead and put this program on a USB stick and stick it in a computer. And once I get confirmation, I'll pay you 10 grand in Bitcoin." Like we've seen so many stories like that where that's really becoming a problem, which is it's not an attacker from across the world that's connecting up your stuff. It's Joe in accounting who ended up getting behind on his credit card bill and needs extra cash. We've seen a lot of that become a real problem lately. And who gets attacked, Todd?
Everybody.
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 I would say this is an interesting stat. People, especially if you're not prepared for this, you're going to get attacked. It's a dichotomy because you can see in 2022 to 2024, there was a rapid rise for high revenue organizations. That's what these bar graph says of, hey, this is how fast we're improving our cyber resiliency versus the gray bar, which is, and when I say high revenue, I'm talking 250 million plus a year. That's what I'm meaning by that. This gray bar down here is barely coming up. And we're seeing down here that, hang on a second, I have to move my little timer.
Well, while you're
Yeah,
doing that, I mean, the reality is, right,
yeah,
is even if you're prepared, you're
yeah,
still
yeah.
going to get attacked. It's just a question of how bad. Your
Yeah.
preparedness is what helps keep it from being catastrophic, right?
One of my graphics is not loading, and if you had seen that, I would have layered over this, showing you that what we're seeing is higher revenue organizations are actually decreasing the frequency of attack because their investment has inordinately gone up. and their cyber risk, both on the insurance and proactive measure. And this is why I was trying to get it to work. My slide deck's just not agreeing with me today. It's a bar
Sure.
graph, right? It goes up in terms of here's where these 250 plus million organizations are spending and their rapid and where they're going on versus under that, right? And the trickle effect. And the problem is this is a path of least resistance problem, in my opinion. Whereas attackers are always going to default. I'm not saying if you're prepared, they're not going to come after you, but I am saying that if you're a hacker trying to make a buck, I'm going to go for the path of least resistance, aka the person who has less protection around them, because I know I can make money, and we're going to go into that in a second, because that's what they want. Um, we see centers of where a lot of cyber attackers gather. It's a global problem, but some places are worse than others for producing attackers. Russia, Nigeria, Ukraine,
China.
uh, China, United States is on that list too, but United States hackers mostly avoid United States businesses for obvious reasons. They legally. Iran is in this list as well. And it all comes down to money. If you read these articles I have thrown up here, I mean, you're going to see that the average Russian salary is around $14,000 USD a year. That's the median. The average cybercrime attack I see, I dealt with a church with 6 people on staff at one point that lost over $115,000 from financial fraud of a cyber attacker. That's a huge payday. You can see over here in Iran, the average Iranian salary is like 715 bucks a month. Same deal. Average salary in a year for someone in Nigeria is $2,000 USD a year, right? Like this is real money. This is a powerful transference of wealth. I would say, and one of the articles I'm going to show in a second, because they want your money. That's fairly simple. They just want your money. Else again. But one of the thing articles I'm going to show in a second is going to show you, hey, this is actually where you're seeing a lot of rundown economies and nation states that don't have budgets. They're raising revenue, capital injections into their local economies and budgets by taking it from Western countries that are more developed.
It's better than tourism.
Yeah. I mean, those people, when they raise that $50,000, even if they're just criminals, they're going to go spend that on their local economies. And that's good for everybody from the criminal section part of the world. That's one of the reasons why Russia unofficially is kind of well known for not prosecuting cyber criminals as long as they don't target Russian companies. They just don't do it. There's sort of an open habeas corpus going on there in terms of prosecution.
When they had one of the last ransomware, did you install the Russian language pack on all your clients' machines? So
No, because I knew if I was that far gone, I was doomed.
there was a bug in this, not a bug, there was a feature in the software for ransomware where if it saw the Russian language pack, it would not install the virus so that they would not inadvertently target a Russian company. So if you install the Russian language pack into Windows, the virus would never install itself.
Mhm. I mean, this kind of stuff is really taking off in popularity, and it's only growing as a problem. I'm checking the chat real quick to make sure we don't have any questions. I don't think we do so far. So I'm going to keep on trucking. The next question is if you're a small business and you hear about stuff, you're probably thinking, what kind of risk could I possibly have, right? Like, they're never going to get in. I'm all on the cloud. I got X, I got Y. Well, first off, you have to understand something. Because of the money involved, these criminals are willing to spend a little bit of time to get to know you. If what the typical tactic I see, Todd, is often they'll shotgun the internet with phishing emails. Wait till someone clicks it because they can see when you click the phishing link, see who the email address is of the person who clicked it, and then they'll start digging in and doing a little bit of research. That's what I see a lot. The phishing email gives them that initial flag of this is who I should look at. And then they'll spend time. They'll look at things like trying to put together phishing emails that are super realistic and hard to tell difference on. They'll look for accounts that have passwords leaked on the dark web. They'll scan your IP address and see if your building has a port open they can remotely access. And of course, if you have a website, any kind of, public facing customer database, they'll go ahead and take a pro out of that and see if they can get initial access to that. I mean, this is something where they're willing to spend, I've seen attackers spend weeks on a single attack because they know the payday is going to be in the 6-figure mark. That line up with what you're seeing?
Absolutely correct. And sadly, the American business mentality of trying to make everything easy for the consumer also makes it easy for the criminal by putting names and addresses and email addresses and phone numbers right on their website. it's easy enough for the criminals to build a profile on your company, on your whatever. It doesn't matter how big the company is, it can be one person. But people are trying to be friendly to their customers and make things easier for customers or potential customers to find them. It also arms the criminals with the information they need to trick you.
Yeah, businesses run on processes, organizations run on processes, and with processes, there's a lot of mentality of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Like you don't want to go reinvent the wheel because you want standardized processes throughout your organization that produce results. And I think the biggest challenge of cybersecurity is these criminals know that and they look for chinks in the armor of that process a lot of times. They'll find where the process is missing something, right? Or they'll find where the process hadn't considered something in employee reactions, employee behaviors. And that's how they get these paydays, right? Like it's people on these, I've seen, I actually saw this happen where a nonprofit had an architecture firm. They were getting like their old building remodeled and they need like an architect to consult on. A criminal figured out, hey, they've got an engagement with his architecture firm, and the financial person's process is get an invoice, approve it, post it, and commission, a check, a cashier's check, because that's how they did that. So they impersonated, they after getting into the they impersonated architecture firm and tricked the well-meaning financial administrator to, post that check and send it out. And the problem is you would think, hey, financial administrator sending out, $100,000, that's a lot of money, but that process had been so ingrained in their workflow for so long. It's what they did day in, day out, day in, day out. Because that's what you do in any organization. You do a process that, by the time the light bulb kind of tricked and said, this isn't right, it was too late. That's where these criminals are really good, in my opinion, of getting into there and figuring out how to subvert that.
And I think what a
So,
lot, oh, sorry,
okay.
go ahead, Luke.
No,
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 go
it's
ahead, go
okay,
ahead.
buddy.
No,
I
go
was
ahead.
just going to say, I think what a lot of business owners don't realize is a lot of times their risk outweighs their reward in their business model. So someone who's transactional, I have a subcontractor doing work for me, I have a client I'm doing work for, and I make my 5% on the spin of the money, I'm at 100% of the risk. Because if the client accidentally gets a fake bill and they pay it, I'm not going to make them pay again, but I still have to pay my subcontractor who did the work. So not only am I out my profit, I'm out the extra money because if I don't pay the subcontractor, he's not going to work for me anymore.
I posted about this earlier today, and I think the thing about cybercrime where it's really insidious is businesses, nonprofits, don't care who you are, continuity is the thing you care about. You want things to keep running, keep humming along, but that's why it's hard sometimes because until it's broken, you're not going to fix anything out of sight, out of mind. As a business leader, I see it all the time that people just underestimate how much of their business is tied to their digital assets or their organization is tied to their digital assets. And they can't see it because they're so imbibed in the day to day of, I get it. I'm a CEO myself. You constantly have crap you got to fix all the time. You're fixing stuff and you're just dealing with what's in front of you. And then all of a sudden, oh, boom, ransomed. Oh, boom, money gone. This is a big problem. But I couldn't see it before because a lot of this stuff is out of sight, out of mind. Ransomware, we talk a lot about that, and I think that's the reason why it's easy for a lot of business leaders to really latch onto that because it's very easy to understand, hey, my business goes down for 10 days. I'm not making money, or my customers aren't being serviced, or my communications aren't going out, whatever it is, right? Like that is going to have a ramrod effect of long-term consequences that isn't just that initial 10 days. Financial fraud, same thing. If accounts payable is missing $50,000 and you got to pay the electric bill and you don't have the money, talk about having a disruption, right? Like, hey, somebody's got to go figure that out now. That's where these costs really start adding up. And I think a lot of people underestimate because I hear a lot of, hey, I don't have PII. I don't have personally identifiable information. What's my risk? Disruption. Like you're going to be dealing with this for months, if not years, once they get in and they do their magic because they're taking profit, whether it's extracting it to you with extortion tactics, stealing from your bank account, or trying to leverage you to steal from somebody else, which we didn't get into supply chain risk. I don't have time for that. But that has a different yet equally concerning amount of problems when you're caught up in a supply chain attack. The list goes on and on. Okay. I think we've sufficiently talked about the horror, and I hope we've taken it with a good attitude, but it's not like we're powerless. There are things people can do to actually put this risk back in what I call the reasonable column. I do want to eliminate a common misconception, though, before we go into that, which is elimination of the risk. It is not possible to eliminate this risk. That's not our goal here either. It is every organization has risk. This is just a new column of risk in the last decade or so that you have to measure and say, is it at an appropriate level where I'm okay with it? Right now, the risk is just too high, in my opinion, for most organizations, especially in the small business category. It's just they don't understand it, and it's beyond what they're willing to tolerate if they actually did. But you got to wake up to that reality first. You got to actually put some effort in and figure out how to measure that risk. I'm going to tell a story, Todd, but before I do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, I 100% agree with that. I can't say that one any better.
So I'm from Ohio. I introduced myself the call. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Logan. I'm based out of Columbus, Ohio. I'm CEO of TTS, and there's a small town right next to Columbus called Grandview. And in Grandview, there's a small nonprofit, this slash government agency. It's a weird thing where they run the parks for the entire city. And unfortunately, they fell victim. So this organization is not that big. And I can talk about this because this is all public information now. It's been released to the media. I'm not going to go into anything that's not public knowledge. This organization had an operating budget of a little, let's say over $1 million. I don't know the exact number. I think it might have been a million and change, but it was over $1 million. Had approximately, I'd say, let's say less than 10 people. Let's say less than 10 people so I don't destroy any identities here working for them. So a small nonprofit. Their budget was raised almost exclusively off of grants, donations, and a partnership with the city. So it really truly was a nonprofit. They didn't generate money. They weren't a government agency truly, but they also were 100% nonprofit. And what these criminals did is they managed to send out a fish and get access to the Microsoft 365. From there, they lurked and they gathered information and they managed to take over $713,000 from an account that was set aside there. That was back in December, January. The situation gets worse. If you read the story I posted there, they announced 5 months later in May that their cyber insurance claim was finally settled. Took 5 months, by the way, to get that claim all the way out. Sadly, the cyber insurance policy only covered, even though they had $1 million policy, only covered $250,000 of the damages. So the big concern was in the community, in the scuttlebutt, and this isn't in the article, was, are they going to raise taxes, city taxes, to pay back this thing? Is something going to happen here? I need to actually follow up because I know they were fighting for their survival when all this stuff came out. That's pretty obvious if you're in a city and you're like, hey, who's going to replace the budget? Not me. Why do I have to replace the budget? I mean, I get it. I don't like paying more taxes than anybody else, but still, this is this is a tiny nonprofit, not huge, yet they can lose this kind of money. Now you can see why this is a problem. And you look over here at Statista, you can see just how rapidly it's increasing. Look at this. It just starts out in 2018 and takes off like a balloon. 2020, 21, 22, 23. It just keeps going up, 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 up. Like there is no end in sight to how bad this is going to get. And even individuals, if they have high net worth, aren't immune to this. Look at Andy Cohen. Andy Cohen fell for a texting scam where he got tricked into getting a bunch of his money to a cyber criminal. I mean, they know they can make money, I guess, as I'm getting at here, and they can do it on small people, organizations, and big Fortune 500 companies. It's just a matter of how. So that's the first thing you do. You need to understand this is just the reality we live in. It's not going anywhere. I wish it would. This is one of those times where I would be okay being put out of a job if it truly did fix the problem, right? If the problem went away overnight, I would say for the amount of people I've seen suffer, I'd be okay finding a different line of work. The problem is I don't see that happening anytime soon. So here's what you came for if you're attending this webinar. You're looking for the 8 free ways, and I've got them for you. We're going to go through these real quick with the last 5 minutes we have here. So here are some easy options right now. Say you're not sure where to start. I'm going to be honest with you. That's okay. Cybersecurity and cyber risk management is not a one action. It's a journey, and it's a journey of 1,000 steps in my mind. Starting today and putting some things in place gets you started on that journey and gets you going. Because the worst thing you can do with handling this risk is just choose to not do anything about it. So first and foremost, you should be enabling multi-factor authentication, bare minimum, on your email. That's the number one targeted thing hackers are after. They want access to email accounts. It has your contacts, it has information, they can communicate with people and get a level of trust that they wouldn't otherwise get. Put MFA on your email. Two, your employees are going to have to learn about this. There is street smarts requirement here. Todd, you live outside Chicago. Would you say there's parts of Chicago that if you're a true Chicago native, don't go there after dark?
You don't go there during the day.
Don't go there during the day. Okay. And you know that because there's real consequences if you don't know that. Everybody learns it at the School of Hard Knocks. I'd say we're there. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was saying yes, I'm agreeing. Yeah.
Yeah, so go ahead and start training people and giving them a place where they can start understanding and recognizing these scams. Number three, I get it. Nobody wants to go through and figure out who needs access to what, but you can't give everybody in your organization access to everything. That's a really bad idea. You need to make sure people have roughly only the information they need to do their jobs. If someone's not a CEO, they should not have access, or on the leadership team, they should not have access to a folder containing all the finances. It's stuff like that that gets organizations in trouble every single time. There is a free service on both Mac and PC if you're running Windows 10 or Windows 11 Pro and newest versions of Mac OS called BitLocker or for Windows or FileVault that turns on encryption for your computer. What that means is if somebody steals your laptop, it sucks. Don't get me wrong, it absolutely sucks, and you're not that, but at least you don't have to worry about them going to a computer repair store and trying to pull all your information off the hard drive. Turn it on. Takes 2 seconds. Google it. Really easy. Free password management solutions. I think a lot of people don't know this, Todd. They exist. I'm not saying that the end all be all. They have limitations, but like KeePass, I used to use KeePass back in the day. It's free. It's got a mobile app. If you're just looking for a password manager for just you to control your stuff, and you don't want to pay that $10 a month or whatever it costs to get, Dashlane or whatever, this is a great solution. And just my only warning to you is don't lose the password file. Make sure that thing's safe somewhere where you know where it's at if you go down that road. But KeePass is a great option. Newsletters are excellent. If you are not in the cybersecurity space, you don't have time to stay and read everything and read up and get up to date on all this stuff. That's probably why if you're watching this, you're watching this. Subscribing to a monthly newsletter from a cybersecurity threat intelligence, we have one, for example, that can give you a quick breakdown of this is the kind of stuff you need to be on the lookout for. Just Google it. You will find so many. I have one. Google TTS newsletter. We will go ahead and put you on it. It's really worth your time. Risk assessments. All cyber management risk starts with an assessment of where exactly is the risk. I have seen for compliance, I have seen for financial, I've seen everything say, hey, we know going into this when we're starting in cybersecurity, we need some kind of assessment to figure out where we currently stand. Getting a risk assessment or even conducting one yourself internally, an initial risk assessment, which we do have a free offer for that later today, is a great place to start. And last but not least, you need to create, when something happens, when I get hacked, what is the plan? You need to write that down, even if it's not that great. Let me tell you why. Todd?
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you a question. Have you ever had a crisis in your life where you get hit so hard and you sit there and you're like, I don't even know what to do because things are swirling?
Everybody has.
I have. I still remember the time. She's gonna kill me for mentioning this, but I'll tell you a different story. I had an embarrassing story about my wife, but then I'm like, she's gonna watch it, so I'm in trouble. So I switched. I still remember the time where my kid, when she was just before she turned 2, was jumping up and down on the couch, and I said, "Hey, stop that!" And before I could get the words out of my mouth, she literally flipped over, fell down, and landed square on her head and her neck off the couch, right? Like full on, no shoulders, just head on the floor, smashed. And I still remember that gut reaction, right? Like everything's just became super panicky because, oh my gosh, I need to get her the ER. Where am I going to get her code? It's hard to think straight when you're in those emotional situations.
Correct.
Cyber attacks are no different. You need to have something written down that you can follow because 9 times out of 10, if an organization gets hit, the people in charge, they're not going to be thinking 100% clearly. It's a very charged situation. Having a framework to follow and reference keeps you on the straight and narrow. We are at time, so I'm going to end today with our free offer. I've got a cyber risk self-assessment. It's not an end-all be-all, but it's an easy 10-minute free offer of a checklist where you can start going through and evaluating your cyber risk as an organization through broad categories that we normally would evaluate in a professional assessment. If you can't scan the QR code, you can also find it at ttscyber.net. That's ttscyber.net. Basically, we're going to ask you where we need to email the results to. You fill out the assessment online. We have a web page, and we'll email the results finalized once it's all done. Well, we're at time, and right on time too. 1:30 exact. Todd, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself one more time? I'll stop sharing, and we'll go ahead and exit.
Sure. I'm Todd Thorson from Tange Cybersecurity and Technology, just out here outside of Chicago. And really glad to be here with you, Logan. Great presentation, bud. A lot of real good information. So thank you.
Todd, you know me. I never have a problem talking, do I?
No, you don't.
I have many weaknesses as a man, but talking is not one of them. All right, Logan Edmonds, CEO of TTS, Columbus, Ohio. Guys, stay safe out there, especially as we go into the holiday season. Again, it's a journey of 1,000 steps. Let's just start somewhere, and using the resources we gave you today is a great place to start. Thank you so much.
Thank you.